friends, I'm so excited to show you how to create a tabletop version of a game of soccer today called Foosball. So we're going to be recycling an old shoebox and making this super fun game that you can play with your friends and family. So the first thing that we are going to need for our game is an old shoebox, something like this. If yours has a top attached to it, like the example that I created then we're gonna go ahead and cut that off. Mine doesn't have the top on it, so I just took the regular top off of a shoebox and I'm just using the bottom part. I'm also going to need these wooden sticks called dowels. So I got these from the craft store. If your shoebox is pretty small, like this one is, you might be able to actually use a straw, something like this. It just has to be long enough so that it goes past your shoebox, like that. So the one that I created earlier was a pretty big shoebox, so my straw did not fit across, so I used these dowels. So they're wooden sticks called dowels. These ones are about 12 inches long, and mine came in a pack of 10, I think. So you can grab those. And we are going to need 10 of our clothespins. So I got a pack, and they look like this. I got wooden ones. You could also get plastic ones, so you'll need 10 of those. We're going to need a ruler. We're going to be doing some measuring today. A pencil. We're going to need 2 different colors of markers, or you could also use paints if you wanted to, but we want to make sure there are 2 colors that look sort of different from each other so that they're easy to tell apart. So I've got my red marker and a blue marker. We're going to need a hole punch like this, a hand hole punch one. Let's see what else. We're going to need some paper. I'm using green to make a green field. You can make your field any color that you want, or you could just draw directly onto the box and not have a colored field. But if you are going to, then we're going to use some glue. I've got a glue stick here. And to make the markings on my field, I'm going to be using a white crayon. So if you want to do that like the one that I created, so you can see I've got on my field the markings of a soccer field using my white crayon. So you could go ahead and use a white crayon, or you could use a different color if you want. And I've also, we're going to need a ping pong ball. So you can get these at the grocery store. They usually have them in some of the aisles or the dollar store. And that's all. Oh, and one last thing that's helpful is some rubber bands. These you don't necessarily need, but they can be. I'll show you at the very end how we're going to use those. So the first step is that we're going to take our shoebox and scissors. That's one important thing. And for this activity, we're probably going to need to use regular scissors instead of kid scissors or safety scissors. You could try and see if they work, but since we're going to be cutting out some of the cardboard at the end, it might be easier to use these. So make sure that you either have permission from your parents to use these type of scissors, or they can supervise you while you do that. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is making the field to go into our tabletop foosball game. So what we're going to do, I'm going to clear my space off a little bit, and I am going to take my pencil, and you can just put the paper, I'm going to fold this down so you can see a little better. You can put the paper underneath your box, and then you can go ahead and just trace around your box to create the size of paper that we're going to cut out to put in our box. So I'm going to go ahead and line up the edge. And then I'm going to use my pencil and just mark right where it's going, the line for me to cut on later. All right. So foosball is pretty cool because it's kind of like soccer. That's what they made it, kind of copied it off of. off the game of soccer, but foosball has become a sport itself. So you can actually, so I'm gonna go ahead and take my scissors and I'm gonna cut, let's see, on, hopefully you can see that line. It's got a little bit of a shine there. Turn it this way so you can see better. See the pencil line right there. So foosball, you can actually play in tournaments of foosball and even become a professional foosball player, which means that you can use it as a job and you can even get paid for it, which is pretty cool. So we're gonna go ahead and cut on this line, line up my scissors and snip right on the line. And I read an interesting fact about foosball is that the longest game of foosball ever was 61 hours. Can you imagine playing a game for 61 hours? That would be crazy. I think the longest sport I ever played was probably maybe like 4 hours. What's the longest that you've ever played a sport for? All right. Now I've cut out my paper, so we're time to go ahead and make sure that it fits in there. So we're gonna take it and place it directly into our box. So my paper wasn't quite long enough. So you can see I've got a little bit of white on the edge. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and take the rest of my paper that I've got the little end part, and I'm going to measure and see how much extra I need. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the box and fold the side so that it's a good marking. And then I'm going to take my pencil and make my line right there at the fold. This is a tough one to show you because I've got to use the box sideways so that you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and make my marking right at the fold there. I'm going to go ahead and take that out and we'll cut this one this time. Cut on the line. All right, and our next step is going to be to glue the two pieces together. So I'm going to go ahead and make a marking of where the first green paper ends. So you can see I have that part of white that's showing. So I'm going to make a line on this paper of where this green paper ends. So I'm going to put it down and kind of move it a little off to the side so that I can see that white right there. Trying to get the box to show you. So move it off to the side so I can see that white spot, and I'm going to make a line so that I can see. So I made a line right there. Okay. So now I know where to do my gluing. So I'm going to take my glue stick, and I like to use a paper plate when I'm doing any gluing or coloring, just to make sure that I don't get it on my table. So I am going to push this down again so you can see, and right on that line right there, that's where I want to make sure this part of the green paper is not glued. So the rest of it can be glued on, but this line where I made on is where it's going to be not glued. So I'm going to take my glue stick. I'm going to try a different light because it looks like we're getting a little bit of, it's hard to see with the other lights. Let me turn off this one. Okay. Hopefully we'll be able to see better now. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take my glue stick, take the top off, and I'm going to go ahead and glue all along the part where we want it to be attached to this paper, but not on the part next to that line where we want it not to be attached. So go ahead and put my glue on. And I'm going to push my paper right on the line. Perfect. All right, the next step is that we're going to create the lines on the field. So the lines are to separate the two halves of the field. So usually in soccer, there's 11 people on each team, and they'll line up. One team will line up on one side of the field and one team on the other side. So we're going to go ahead and create that line to show whose half of the field it is, and then a circle, because usually the ball, when the game first starts, the ball starts in the circle. So we're going to create those two things right now with our, I'm going to use my white crayon, but you can use any kind of crayon you want. Or you could just go ahead and make the markings right into your box if you wanted to. You could, instead of making the fields a piece of paper. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to go ahead and measure how long my piece of paper is. So I'm going to line it up, and we're going to make sure that we line it up at the part that starts closest to the 1. So the very beginning of the ruler, I'm going to line up with the edge of my paper, and I'm going to see where it ends, and mine is 12 inches long. So half of 12 is 6, so that's where I'm going to be doing my line, right at the 6-inch mark. So you can see the 6 right there. So I'm going to be putting a little mark by the 6. So there we go. I'm lining it up again. And right at the 6, I'm going to make a little mark. And then to make sure that my line is straight, because sometimes when I make lines, they're not always very straight. So I'm going to use my ruler again to help me make a super straight line. So I'm going to line it up right at that spot that we made with our crayon. And I'm going to create a line straight down the middle. Make sure it's nice and straight. And since this white crayon doesn't show up super great, I'm going to do it a couple times just to make sure that you can see it really well. So push down pretty hard. There we go. And we have a nice straight line right in the middle of the field. Our next is that we're going to make that circle. So you can see the circle in the middle right there. Same with my lines. Sometimes my circles, I have a little bit of trouble making really nice circles. So I'm going to be using a cup to help me make a perfect circle. So I've got my cup right here, my handy dandy cup that's holding some of my markers. And I'm going to go ahead and put this right on the middle of my line and trace around the bottom. So I'll push this down so you can see again. So I'm going to put it right where I think about the middle of the line is. And I'm going to take my crayon, and I'm just going to trace right around the circle. I'm going to do it a few times just to make sure that we can see it really well. And there we go. We've made a very, very nice circle because we used the bottom of our cup. That's a perfect circle. It looks great. All right, so next step is that we are going to glue it to the bottom of our box. So I am going to go ahead and put glue on the bottom of my box and then push my paper in. So I'm going to color my glue. I'll push this down again so you can see it a little better. All right, so I'm going to push up my glue stick so that it has more glue. So I just turned the bottom there. If you're using a glue stick, you could use regular glue from a bottle and push that out too. So here we go. We're going to back and forth with our glue stick till it's all covered. I'm going to make sure that we get the edges really, really well because those are the parts we want to make sure that don't stick up. I'm going to go around the edges a few times. And then I'm going to do the same to my paper just to make sure that we get it really to stick really well. So I'm going to go right along the edges of my paper and make sure that we've got them so that they, oops, my box fell. All right, and I'll do an X in the middle. Perfect. And then I'm going to push that back down because we're not going to be using the glue anymore, and put the top on and put it aside. Then I'm going to take my box with all my glue in it, and I'm going to push my paper, push it, put it in there, and then I'm going to push it down. And the great thing about this game is that we are actually reusing an old shoebox instead of throwing it away. So it's a great way of recycling something that we don't need anymore and making it into something new. So I'm going to try to flatten that out as best I can with my hands like this. There we go. All right, so now we have our field. It looks great. Next step is that we are going to take our clothespins and we're going to take 10 out and separate them into 2 piles. So I'm going to put this away for just a minute. I'm going to put this box up. Hopefully you'll be able to see better if it's up higher. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and count out 10 of these clothespins. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now I'm going to do 5 more and put them on the other side so that they're separated into 2 piles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and go back into my package for the last one. 5. All right. And we're going to need our 2 different color markers or paints. So make sure, like I said at the beginning, we're going to make sure that we have ones that are kind of opposite colors. So we don't want to use like red and pink that might be difficult to tell apart because we're going to make sure that we can tell whose team is whose. So the 2 teams want to have, they're just like in soccer when you wear a different color jersey for different teams. We want to make sure that our foosball players have 2 opposite colors so that we can tell which team we're on. So I'm going to take my 2 colors and I'm going to take 5 of them. We put them into 2 piles, so we're going to take 5 and go ahead and color. You could color the whole thing or paint the whole thing, or you could just do the top because we want to make sure that we can see, like for my example, we want to make sure we can see which player is on which team. So if you wanted to do the whole thing, you could. I just did the top so you could see. You could also decorate them like little soccer players or any kind of decoration that you wanted. So I'm going to just do the top part. So we're going to make a line kind of right about where this metal bar is. And I am going to go ahead and color that part in. So we're just going to color, or like I said, paints work great too. All right. So color back and forth on both sides. I played soccer when I was younger and I loved to play defense. Defense is the when you're on the part of your job on defense is to try to stop the other player from getting a goal. So the other team's trying to come to try to get into your goal, and you would be trying to kick it away to go to the other side of the field. That was my favorite thing to play. Okay, so I've got that, and I'm going to go ahead and do the top two just so that you can see really well when you're seeing from above when we're playing the game. So go ahead and color that part just like that. All right, now we're going to do the next one. So we've got quite a few to do. So color back and forth. I'm interested to know what you guys' favorite sport is. My favorite sport growing up was gymnastics. That was definitely, I loved to play soccer, but then eventually I switched over to gymnastics. All right, there we go. And I've got my North Carolina sweatshirt on because North Carolina, I actually live in that state, and they have a super, super talented soccer team at the college North Carolina. The women's soccer team is very, very good, and they've won a lot of national championships. So I'm going to keep coloring this. And get the little top part so you can see it from above. We've got two more to go. All right. And I saw an example of someone that made this, and they took these little balls. I think you can either use wooden balls or styrofoam balls, and they glued them onto the top so it looked like the soccer players had heads, which was pretty cool. So you could really decorate them just like soccer players if you wanted to. All right, and I've got one more of my red before I switch to my blue. All right, there we go. So we have our 5 clothespins decorated with one color, and now we're going to go ahead and switch to our second set, and we're going to do our blue. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and color this in. And we've got there's 2 down. And let's do our third one. And fourth. And one last one. I'm excited to play this with my nephew when he comes to visit. So I'm wondering who you guys are going to play your foosball game with. You're going to play it with a brother or sister, or your mom or dad, or maybe when you're able to play with your friends again, this would be super fun. And this is a great game when it's raining outside or you're not able to go outside and play, and you can still get to play a sport inside on your table, which is pretty cool. All right, so we've got our 2 sets, 5 of one color and 5 of another. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step, which is that we need to make holes in our box so that we can put our dowels through. So I'm going to put these aside for right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our pencil. Let's see if I can find mine. There it is. All right, so I've got my pencil, and I'm going to take one of my clothespins and I'm going to attach it just like that. And I am going, what we're going to do is we're trying to see how high or low we need to make our hole in the side of the box. And the reason is that we want to make sure that our clothespin doesn't touch the field when we have it on the dowel and it's moving back and forth. We don't want it to get stuck on the field, but we don't want it to be so high that it doesn't touch the ball. So I'll show you if I can find my ball. Yep. So you can see we want to make sure that it can still hit the ball, but that it doesn't hit the field. So what I'm going to do, and I am having some trouble seeing myself in the camera, so I'm hoping that you're able to see what I'm doing, and I'll make sure that I describe it really well so that you can at least hear if something's out of frame, you can sort of hear what I'm saying, and hopefully that will help you if you're not able to see it perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my ball down, and I'm going to see if where I have it, it can hit the ball but doesn't hit the field. So I'm going to go ahead and measure where that would be. So kind of where it's hitting the field, and I'm going to go up a little bit. And right where that is with my pencil, I'm going to make a mark. So I'm going to make a mark, go back and forth. And then our next step is that we're going to take our ruler, and we want to measure how far that mark is from the bottom of the box. So again, we want to start from the very bottom of the ruler, the part where it's closest to 1, not the part where it's closest to the 12. So I'm going to put my ruler at the bottom of the box and measure to where my line is. So hopefully you can see where that is, because like I said, I'm not able to see in my screen what you're seeing. So I can see that mine's a little past the 2-inch mark. So I'm going to go ahead and make that line on the other side as well. So I'm going to measure, and a little past the 2-inch mark, I'm going to make a little line so that I can see. So double check my measurement. So it's at, there's 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the little tiny marks. So I'm going to put it on the other side and measure to 2 and count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the little marks. And I'm going to make a mark there so that now we'll make sure that our lines are at the same height. So we're going to take our ruler one more time, and we're going to place it in our box and make a straight line. My last box that I did was a little bit bigger so I could fit my ruler. This one's having a little trouble. We're going to try to make a straight line right where that mark is. So I'm going to go ahead and take my pencil and make a line, and same thing on the other side. I'm going to put my, let's see if there's something else I could use that's maybe a little bit, let's try this. We're going to try a coaster. Nope, that doesn't work either. We'll try to just fit our ruler in here. Push it in. Right, and line it up with that mark that we made. And make the straightest line that we can. If you're having trouble putting your ruler in, we're just going to go ahead and make the straightest line that we can across where we met that mark that we made with our ruler earlier. So I'm going to take my pencil and just try to eye the best straight line that I'm able to make. And it doesn't have to be perfect, so this should work just fine. All right, and our next step is that we are going to make 4 holes with our hole punch. So I'm going to take my hole punch, and we're going to make our holes line up with the line that we just created. So I'm going to go ahead and so sometimes our box is a little bit, our hole punch doesn't reach down to our line. So if that happens, what you can do is take your scissors and you can make a little bit of a cut into your box so that your hole punch can reach better. So I'm gonna make a little cut 4 times. There we go. And one more. All right. And we can make a little snip like a triangle to make sure that our hole punch can fit down to that line. A little snip and snip. There we go. And so now we're going to go ahead and take our hole punch, and we're going to go, and this is going to be tough for you to see, but I'm going to make it go right onto the line that we made earlier. So I'm going to push it down as far as I can. And press it together so that it makes a hole punch. There we go. We got our first hole. And hole number 2. And line it up onto that line. 3. And one more. There we go. Now we've got our 4 hole punches. So we're going to do the same on the other side, but to make sure that they're lined up well, we're going to go ahead and take our dowel, or like I said, you could probably use a straw if your shoebox is small enough that the straw fits across. So I'm going to take my dowel and I'm going to go ahead and push it through. And if it's a little bit bigger than your hole, then you can just keep twisting it and it should fit in a little bit better. So we're going to go ahead and push it through and line it up to the line that we measured out earlier. And I'm going to make a little bit of a mark right there where my dowel meets my line so that I can see right about where I'm going to make that hole punch. And then I'm going to use my next one. Push the dowel through the hole all the way to the line and create a little mark. And there we go. Another little mark on our line right where our dowel meets it. And we're going to get our last one out. I'm going to go ahead and open my new package. There we go. We've got our last dowel, and we're going to go ahead and push it right through our hole punch. Line it up to the line that we made earlier. And make a little mark with our pencil. Perfect. So now we're going to go ahead and make our holes right in the spots that we made our marks with our pencil just now. So again, we're probably going to have, if your hole punch doesn't meet that spot on your box, you're probably going to have to do the same thing that I did, where you make a little bit of a cut into your box with your scissors. And we're going to do that all 4 spots right above those little marks that we made. And then if you still need, so you can see if it'll fit now that you've made that little mark, but if it doesn't, then you can go ahead and make that little triangle shape cut out so that it fits better. All right, we got one more to go. Make sure I cut just a little further so that I can make sure that my little triangle shape comes out. And go ahead and we're going to do our hole punches now. So find that little mark on the line that we made and use our hole punch. Line it up and make your hole. Press, wiggle it out, line it up, press down, and wiggle it out. Line it up, press down, wiggle it out. And last one. Perfect. All right. The next part that we're going to do is we are going to make our holes for the goal. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our ping pong ball. Those are easy to lose because they're clear, huh? See where my ping pong ball went? Well, oh, there it is. Got my ping pong ball, and I'm going to put it on the side, and we're going to measure out about, we want it to make sure that the spot that we're going to cut out is high enough for the ball to fit and wide enough for the ball to fit. So I'm going to take my marker, and if yours is dark, if your shoebox is a dark color like mine and it's hard to see your mark, you can always put the ball on the inside and do your mark that way. So just so that you can see better, I'll do like I would do on the outside, and then I will go ahead and do it on the inside so that I can see to cut out better. So I'm going to make sure that, and we can even measure if we want. So I'm going to measure and start at the 1. So the ball is about, we want to make sure that it's at least 2 inches wide so that the ball can fit. And same on the top. So we want to make ours 2 by 2. So I'm going to measure out 2 by 2, 2 inches. So 2 inches tall. Measure. So there's my 2 right there. So I'm going to make a mark. And I also want to make sure it's 2 inches wide. So I'm going to make my mark. There's the beginning, and there's the 2. So now I'm going to connect that dot up to the 2, that dot up to the 2, and across. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to measure 2 inches, and I'm going to do this one on the inside so that I can see a little bit better since my box is black and my marker doesn't show up. So I'm going to measure out 2 inches tall and 2 inches wide. And then I'm going to connect my marks from the bottom to the top where it was 2 inches, on the other side, and across the top. All right. And the next step is that we're going to go ahead and cut it out. And this is the one that I mentioned you might need to use like regular adult scissors. because the kids ones might have a little bit of a tough time getting into the cardboard. So we want to be really careful on this spot and make sure that you have your parents' permission to be using these scissors, and they might want to help you with just this one little tiny part where we need to make a hole first so that we can start making our cut. So we're gonna be really, really careful when you can open your scissors. You can be really careful, and we're going to punch it through. And then we're going to use our scissors to cut out our goal. So we're going to go on the line and cut. I've got some double layered cardboard here, so it's a little bit tough. You might have that on your box too. So I'll do the first layer and then I'll go back and do the second one. I'm going to cut across the top line. And now we're going to cut down the side. And then you can fold it back and you should be able to cut right across the bottom. And so you see mine was a little bit doubled over right here, so I'm going to have to go back and cut that part as well. So I'm going to cut. Now we're going to go ahead and do our other side. So again, be really careful. You can open up your scissors and you can make that, find your line, and we're going to kind of wiggle it until it makes a little bit of a hole in our cardboard so that we can start cutting. So we're going to follow our line. I made my line on the inside, so it's a little tougher to see. And then across the top. And down the other side. And then we're going to open it and cut across the bottom. And again, since mine's that doubled up cardboard, I've got to go ahead and cut the rest of it that was on the other side. And this side. And then we'll just make sure that our ball is able to fit. So you can see it's going to be able to fit in perfectly. So we did a great job making our goals. Now the next time, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take all our dowels and push them through into those holes that we made. So I'm going to take it and go ahead and slide it through. And with all 4 of our dowels. And what we're going to want to do is, I'll show you on the example that I made, see how 2 of them are kind of pushed out further, and these ones are pushed in further. And on the other side, it's the opposite. So we can do that with ours right now that we're making. So I'm going to do the first one is kind of pulled out further. The second one is pushed in. The third one is pulled out. And the fourth one is pushed in. Just like that. And now what we're going to do is take our clothespins. And don't forget the one that you put on your pencil earlier, because we don't want to forget that one. And we're going to take it, and you can either put your clothespins on upside down and then turn your dowel, or you can just clip them, kind of put your hand under and clip them from the bottom. And I'm going to show you on my example one more time so that we can make sure that we get this right. We want to make sure that our first one is, we're going to do every other with our colors. So with my blue, I'm gonna put 2 on my first one and then skip 1, and on the second blue dowel, but it's really the third dowel, I'm gonna have 3 spread out nice and evenly. So I'm gonna go ahead and take all my blues that we already made. We already colored the top of the blue ones, and I'm going to do my first one. So I'm going to do my 2, 1, 2. So nice and even, spread out, and then I can just turn my dowel like that. And then on the third one, I'm going to do 3 of them. So 1, 2, and 3. And then I can turn my dowel again. And then we're going to go on to our red. So we're going to take our red clothespin, or whatever the other color clothespin that you created. I've got my red ones right here. And so again, we're going to do 2 on the first one. The one closest to the goal is going to have 2. And so I'll show you how to do it the other way if you want to. Take your clothespin and open it and kind of push your hand underneath, and you can clip it just like that. I think that way is a little bit tougher. All right, so we want them to kind of be in between the one that we have 3 on with the opposite color. We want those to kind of be in between so we're going to do 1 in between those 2 and 1 in between those 2. So clip that on. And this one I'm going to have to do under so that it fits. You can always use your hand in the little goal if that helps. And then I've got 1 more dowel, and I'm going to put my 3 red ones. So they want to go kind of lined up with the other colors. So 1, 2, and 3. And then turn the dowel. And now to make sure that we know which color that is ours when we're playing. So when you play with a friend or your family member, we want to make sure on one side will be you're going to pick a color. So say you're blue, you'll pick blue, and you'll be using those 2 that are pushed out, and your opponent will be using the opposite over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to color on the end of the stick to make sure that you know which sticks that are yours to move back and forth so that you can try to hit the ball into the goal. So I'm going to take my marker, and I'm going to just do a little bit on the end with the same color. We want to make sure it's the same color as our soccer guys are. So I've got red on this one, so I'm going to put red at the end. And it's going to be the one that's sticking out more, not the one that's pushed in. So we're just going to make a little bit of red at the end. And same with this one, the other one that's sticking out on the red. And then we're going to turn to the other side and do the 2 that are sticking out on this side with the opposite color. And then to make sure that we know which goal is ours, just like I did on this one, I wrote go red and go blue on the side so that I know which goals I'm supposed to get my ball in. So if I was the red team, I want to make sure that I'm getting it into the right goal. So the red team is trying to get it in to the goal that the blue dowel is in front of. So I'm going to write go red on that one and go blue on the side above the goal in front of the red dowel. So go blue is going to go in front of the red. So right here, see if I can, it's going to be hard to write upside down. So I'm going to just write it and then I'll show you. So I'm going to write go, G-O, and then blue, B-L-U-E. So you can see I wrote go blue, and then I'm going to get my red marker. And on the other side, I'm going to write my go red. So that's going to be make sure that it's in front of your blue dowel. There we go. So now we can make sure that we know which side, because we don't want to score on the opposite goal. I think I actually did that when I was little, when I played soccer a few times. Okay, so now one of the last things that we want to do is if you have, just to make sure, because you can sort of push your dowel in and back and forth when you're playing, just to make sure that it doesn't go through, you can attach rubber bands to the end. So I can find my rubber bands. I will be right back. I'm going to grab some rubber bands so that I can show you. I had them before, but I'm not sure what happened. All right, so I'm going to take a rubber band and we're going to put it on the end that does not have the color on it. So I'm just going to wrap my rubber band around the end. Make circles around over and over again. And that way, you can't pull the dowel all the way through when you're playing. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our ping pong ball, and you can make it look just like a soccer ball if you want. So you could take your marker, and I'll show you how to do that. We're going to make, you could make circles, or I like to make octagons. So I'm going to make a line, and then one kind of sticking out, another sticking the other way, and then a straight line down, then one that's going in this way, another going in, and then I'm going to connect the two lines at the bottom. So you can make those all across your soccer ball, and then you can color in every other one so that it ends up looking kind of like this one. And once you've done that, we can drop it in onto the middle of our field so that you can play. So I would be the blue, and I'm going to push back and forth and keep trying to go until that I get the ball. Oh, made a goal. So I'm super excited to play this with my friends and family, and I hope that yours turned out great, and I would love to see it. So please make sure that you take a picture when you've done making yours and put it in the comments or tag us on Facebook in yours. And I'm super excited to hear how your game went. So make sure you stick around for at 1 o'clock to see Mackenzie's video. All right, I'll see you next week. Bye.